My ex tried to deceive me in court. My revelation left everyone speechless. Julia Anderson had spent most of her life quietly navigating the world with a kind heart and steady determination. Growing up in a small town where opportunities were scarce, she learned early on the value of hard work and humility. Her family had never been wealthy, and the modest apartment she shared with her 2 children was a far cry from the polished offices and hardwood floors of the courthouse where she now found herself. Despite the struggles of single motherhood and working extra hours at the Community Legal Aid Center, Julia embraced her role with grace. She had a gentle strength, the kind born from years of facing hardships without complaint. But on this particular day, that strength would be tested in a way she could never have anticipated. The courtroom was packed, a bad sign for Julia's nerves, as murmurs rippled through the gallery. She sat at the defendant's table, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest like a physical force. Across from her stood Ethan, her ex-husband, dressed sharply in a tailored suit that contrasted sharply with Julia's simple blouse and worn cardigan. His smile was smug and unearned, and the flicker in his eyes revealed a man confident in the power of his deception. Ethan was known in the legal circles not just for his charm, but for his ruthless tactics. A far cry from the man Julia had believed in once, before the mask slipped, revealing the calculating, arrogant adversary she now faced. From the moment the judge called the case, the tension in the room was palpable. Ethan's attorney wasted no time unveiling allegations crafted to paint Julia as irresponsible and untrustworthy, a mother unfit to care for her children. The accusations hit like a slap. Claims of infidelity, neglect, and poor judgment that were as baseless as they were personal. Julia's stomach churned as Ethan leaned forward, voice smooth yet venomous, detailing supposed transgressions that felt like daggers to her heart. The courtroom's eyes seemed to pierce her very soul, as if her entire character was being torn apart before their collective gaze. The most humiliating moment came when Ethan produced a series of photos and texts, cleverly edited and taken out of context, aiming to dismantle Julia's reputation piece by piece. A hush fell over the gallery as the images flashed across the screen. Images Julia knew held no truth but bore powerful persuasion. She felt her face flush, the sting of tears blurring her vision. She looked down, fighting the urge to break, as the judge's stern gaze flickered between smirks and nods of approval from Ethan's camp. The air felt suffocating, heavy with accusation and disbelief. Every whispered word from the crowd felt like judgment, and Julia's insecurities bubbled to the surface, a devastating echo of self-doubt seeded by cruel lies. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the legal pad in front of her, trying to steady her breath. But beneath the fear, a small spark of resolve flickered. She had come too far, fought too hard, to let falsehoods define her. Was there anyone out there who had experienced a betrayal so deep it cut through the very fabric of who they thought they were? Did they find a way to rise above the pain that threatened to consume them? Julia's mind raced, wondering if this court would see beyond the facade Ethan so expertly displayed, or if she was destined to be swallowed by the storm of deceit. As the judge prepared to speak, a quiet plea echoed in Julia's heart, a hope that truth might still find a way through the shadows cast by deception. She locked eyes with her children, seated just beyond the courtroom barrier, their innocent faces a reminder of why she had to endure this fight. Their future depended on her strength in this moment. Despite the humiliation and the public scrutiny, Julia's spirit remained unbroken, quietly gathering the courage she would need to face the battle ahead. For anyone watching a loved one be torn apart by falsehoods, the question lingers: how do you stand tall when the entire world seems poised to watch you crumble? The moments that followed in that cramped courtroom were worse than Julia could have ever imagined. Ethan and his attorney pressed their advantage relentlessly, their voices sharp and calculated, cutting into her with each carefully chosen word. The gallery watched, some faces hard with judgment, others whispering among themselves. Fueled by the scandal unfolding before them, Julia felt as though her very identity was being dissected, each sliver of her past dragged up and twisted into a weapon against her. The polished veneer Ethan wore cracked with each statement, revealing the cruelty beneath, and Julia could see the flicker of triumph in his eyes. It was as if her downfall was his victory. The accusations escalated quickly. Ethan's lawyer presented a witness, a colleague of Julia's, who was rumored to harbor resentment, whose testimony twisted Julia's professional reputation into a web of negligence and irresponsibility. Julia's throat tightened with disbelief. She knew that witness had easy motives, yet the room seemed to take the words at face value. The court clerk's pages rustled as more evidence surfaced. Emails, financial records, blurred photographs that suggested Julia's life was a mess of poor decisions. Julia's heart pounded in her chest, the sting of each claim settling like poison. She glanced at her attorney, a quiet woman who gave a subtle, encouraging nod. Yet even that support felt fragile amid the mounting tide of doubt. Inside, a storm raged. Julia's mind reeled as her memories of happier times clashed with the stark battle taking place in front of strangers. She remembered the nights Ethan promised change, the whispered apologies after bitter fights, now all cast aside like dust in the wind. The injustice of being painted as the villain in her own life was suffocating. Tears blurred her vision again, but she swallowed them back fiercely, determined to hold on to some shred of dignity. Still, the weight of humiliation pressed down, as if the courtroom's cold silence was a cage, trapping her beneath layers of lies. The whispered sneers from Ethan's friends, the casual glances from strangers who assumed the worst, these darted at her like barbs, scraping at the vulnerable edges of her soul. Through the haze, Julia grappled with a gnawing question. How did someone she once loved turn into a relentless adversary, eager to strip her of everything she held dear? The thought was almost too painful to bear. Her body trembled subtly. Her breath hitched as exhaustion crept in, sapping the energy she fought so hard to maintain. But there was no reprieve, only the relentless grind of a man wielding falsehood like a weapon, and a system that seemed ready to listen. For a brief moment, the judge's gavel pounded the silence back into place, a sharp reminder that this was no mere skirmish, but a full-scale war for Julia's future and the custody of her children. The room seemed to close in tighter, heat rising from the collective gaze of the crowd. Julia's thoughts flickered desperately toward escape, toward a moment when this nightmare would end, but the reality was stark. She was trapped in the eye of the storm. As Ethan smiled with cruel satisfaction, Julia made a silent, steady vow to everyone watching, and perhaps more importantly, to herself, that she would not be broken. Would anyone ever understand the overwhelming loneliness of being attacked when your only crime was love? Could she find the strength within to fight back, or would the tides of doubt and humiliation prove too strong? The final crescendo of this agonizing chapter was nearing, and the delicate balance between despair and hope hung by the thinnest of threads. Did you ever witness someone's reputation shattered before your eyes and wonder what it truly takes to rebuild it? This was Julia's moment, and the story was far from over. Julia sat quietly in the courtroom, the weight of the accusations like a thick fog clouding her mind and heart. The room around her buzzed faintly with hushed conversations, the shuffling of papers, and the occasional cough, yet inside she felt completely alone. Every pointed glance and whispered speculation gnawed at her self-worth, feeding the relentless storm of doubt that threatened to drown her. She could barely meet the eyes of her attorney, who had been her quiet rock through this ordeal, nor could she bring herself to look at Ethan, whose smirk only deepened a sting of betrayal. The very air seemed heavy with judgment, shrouding her in an invisible cage of humiliation from which she longed to escape. Outside the courtroom, Julia's world had contracted to the smallest circles of hope she could find. She sought solace in fleeting conversations with her closest friend, Maria, whose unwavering loyalty was a balm for her battered spirit. Maria's gentle reminders, "You're stronger than they think," and "This pain won't define you," were lifelines, but even those felt fragile against the cold reality she faced each day. Julia wrestled with the overwhelming loneliness each sleepless night, grappling with silent tears and aching insecurities. Doubt crept in, whispering that maybe she wasn't as strong or capable as she had believed. The scars left by Ethan's falsehoods ran deeper than she expected, shaking the foundation of her identity and her future. Yet amid the despair, Julia glimpsed faint rays of hope. During a rare visit, her son Leon pressed a small drawing into her hand, a scribbling heart with the words, "Mommy, I love you," scrawled unevenly beneath it. The simplicity of the gesture broke through her walls, reminding her why she had fought so hard. It was for moments like this, for the chance to shield her children from the chaos that threatened to tear their family apart. In moments like these, she found the courage to resist the tide of humiliation. She clung to the belief that underneath the lies was a truth strong enough to break through. The loneliness, however, was not just external. Julia struggled with her own internal battles, the fear that maybe she had been blind to Ethan's true nature all along, the guilt for what might have been, the fear that she'd become defined by the pain rather than the person she was. The nights were her hardest enemy, when memories and doubts swirled relentlessly. Still, when she met her children's hopeful eyes every morning, she found the strength to face the day. She met with her attorney to strategize, poring over every detail, searching for a crack in Ethan's flawless web of lies. The journey was exhausting. But Julia was learning that resilience was not a blinding force, but a quiet, persistent light within. One of the small but unexpected blessings came from an unlikely ally, a young court clerk named Hannah, who, with a whispered word or understanding nod, offered Julia a secret smile of encouragement during the longest, darkest hearings. It was a small gesture, but to Julia, it signified that perhaps not everyone was blinded by the deception that beneath the surface some could see and believe. It was enough to keep her pushing forward when everything seemed lost. This glimmer of kindness reminded her that the fight was still hers to win. Have you ever felt so isolated that even a single act of support felt like a lifeline? Julia's story was unfolding in a way many never imagined, caught between crushing humiliation and the faintest hope for justice. The true battle, the one that would define her, was just beginning, and it would demand every ounce of courage she could muster. Would this next chapter bring vindication or further heartbreak? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to be revealed. The day Julia dreaded the most arrived like a relentless storm, washing away any lingering hope and plunging her into a darkness she thought she could never endure. The courtroom seemed colder than ever, every detail sharper and more unforgiving under the harsh glare of unforgiving fluorescent lights. Ethan, with his calculated confidence, unleashed a final, devastating blow, one that threatened not only her reputation, but her ability to remain close to her children. He presented what appeared to be undeniable proof of Julia's supposed neglect. Fabricated emails, altered photos, and manipulated witness statements, each more damning than the last. The room fell into stunned silence, broken only by the judge's repeated requests for calm. Julia's knees shook, her breath catching in her throat, as the weight of these falsehoods crashed down upon her like an avalanche. For a moment, it felt as though everything was lost. Julia's throat tightened, tears threatening to spill over as hopelessness wrapped its cold fingers around her heart. She fought to steady herself, to find a voice that had gone silent beneath layers of pain. The humiliation was so raw and vivid that she felt it burn her skin. It wasn't just a courtroom battle anymore, but a war waged against every fiber of her being. The faces of those watching, some sympathetic, others judgmental, blurred into a haze as doubt and fear combined into a crushing force. Ethan looked triumphant, certain that his deceptions had delivered the final crushing blow. Julia's world tilted toward darkness, and for the first time, she wondered if she would ever emerge from this nightmare. Then, from the depths of despair, came an unexpected spark, the moment that would change everything. Just as the judge was about to adjourn for deliberation, Julia's attorney clasped her hand firmly and whispered, "Trust me, we have one last move." Julia nodded, clutching a worn envelope she had kept hidden away for months, a secret arsenal of truth she had gathered in silence and hope. When it was her turn to speak, she rose with trembling legs and a steady voice that surprised even her. She unfolded the documents, laying out indisputable evidence that exposed Ethan's elaborate scheme. Unedited emails between him and a supposed witness, revealing his direction in fabricating stories, GPS records proving he had altered important timelines, and financial transactions hinting at bribery. The courtroom gasped. Faces shifted from doubt to shock, their eyes now flickering with disbelief at the man they had trusted. Ethan's smirk faded, replaced by a mask of panic and disbelief, as the truth unfurled like a banner in the sunlight. The judge leaned forward, scrutinizing the documents with a mixture of disbelief and renewed focus. Murmurs darted across the room, a cascade of whispers speculating on the sudden reversal. Julia, though exhausted, felt the adrenaline surge through her veins. This was the vindication she had prayed for, the moment when the scales of justice began to balance in her favor. Her children's faces appeared in her mind, shining with hope and trust, giving her the strength to stand tall as the room turned against the man who had tried to destroy her. The tension hung thick in the air, a profound shift rippling through the courtroom as the judge called for a recess to review the revelations. Julia's heart pounded, not from fear, but a fierce, newfound strength. Ethan's world had been shaken to its core, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. The very people who had doubted Julia now looked at her with a quiet respect, and some even offered tentative smiles. The battle was far from over, but this unexpected turn had ignited a fire within Julia, a promise that she would fight not just for justice, but for her dignity, her children, and her truth. Has there ever been a moment when everything you believed was about to be lost, only to have a hidden truth shine through and change the game? Julia's revelation was one such moment, a turning point forged in pain, resilience, and the courage to reveal the light in the darkest hour. The story was building toward a climax that would leave no one untouched, and the courtroom itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for justice to finally take its rightful course. The courtroom reconvened amid a charged atmosphere that hummed with a mix of anticipation, disbelief, and the sharp tension of truths unveiled. Julia stood with a steadiness she hadn't known was possible just hours before, her eyes scanning the room filled with people who moments ago had doubted her. Ethan's once unshakable confidence had given way to furtive glances and a growing sense of unease. The judge's demeanor had shifted from skepticism to a measured gravitas, signaling the weight of this unexpected turn in the trial. The whole courtroom seemed to hold its breath, aware that what would unfold here could alter the course of many lives forever. As the judge directed the proceedings, Julia's attorney presented the mounting evidence piece by piece, methodically dismantling Ethan's web of lies. The unedited messages, genuine timestamps, and witness testimonies corroborating Julia's version of events formed an unassailable foundation. Each revelation sent ripples through the room. Witnesses who had been coerced now recanted under oath, and the prosecution's case faltered against such a wall of irrefutable proof. Julia felt her breath steady, her pulse calm in the face of what once seemed an insurmountable challenge. The fear and doubt that had gripped her now gave way to a quiet, fierce determination. This was her moment, not to just survive the ordeal, but but to reclaim her narrative with unshakable clarity. Throughout the proceedings, Julia's children sat close by, clutching Maria's hands tightly, their innocence a poignant reminder of everything at stake. Seeing her strength reflected in her children's eyes was both humbling and empowering. She realized this wasn't just about her. It was about protecting the little lives who depended on her unwavering courage. The courtroom, once a place of intimidation and cruel judgment, slowly transformed into a theater of truth and redemption. When Ethan's attempts to refute the evidence collapsed utterly, his arrogance shattered, exposing him for the manipulator he was. His expression twisted into something unrecognizable: panic, desperation, and ultimately resignation. In an emotional climax, the judge addressed the court with a voice that carried the weight of justice finally served. Ethan's fraudulent actions were condemned, his attempts to distort the truth and manipulate the legal system laid bare. Custody of the children was firmly restored to Julia, along with a formal admonishment of Ethan's behavior. The room erupted with quiet applause from supporters and gasps of surprise from skeptics alike. Julia's attorney reached out, grasping her hand in congratulation, eyes shining with pride in the woman who had endured so much. Julia felt tears welling not from shame, but from relief and vindication. Her perseverance had turned the tide. As the gavel fell to signal the end of the trial, Julia's spirit soared. She had faced the abyss of humiliation and deceit head-on and emerged not just unbroken, but immeasurably stronger. The long road of anguish, self-doubt, and isolation had led to this moment of triumph, proof that truth and resilience could dismantle even the most formidable adversary. Julia's transformation was not only legal vindication, but a journey of reclaiming her identity and worth beyond a cloud of false accusations. This victory was a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever been wronged, a powerful testament to the strength within ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. Have you ever felt the sweet victory of truth overcoming lies, of justice being more than just a concept, but a lived experience? Months after the courtroom drama had faded into distant memory, Julia found herself standing in the warm light of a spring morning, the soft hum of her children's laughter filling the modest kitchen of their renewed home. The heavy curtains of doubt and humiliation that had once clouded her every step had gradually lifted, replaced by a quiet, profound peace that settled deep in her bones. The victory in court was more than just a legal triumph. It was a transformation of her spirit, a reclaiming of her dignity, and a reaffirmation of the values she held dear. Julia's smile, gentle yet radiant, reflected the resilience born from enduring pain and emerging stronger on the other side. Her days were no longer shadowed by the fear of public judgment or the weight of unfounded accusations. Instead, they were filled with small moments of grace. The way her son's fingers tangled in hers as they walked to school, the soft silence that accompanied her daughter's evening prayers, the friendship and support that blossomed from those who saw her truth amidst the noise. Julia had become more than just a mother and a survivor. She had become a quiet warrior of hope and integrity, someone whose story resonated far beyond the walls of the courtroom. The community that once whispered about her quietly now sought her counsel and admired her strength, inspired by the grace with which she faced heartbreak and betrayal. Looking back, Julia realized that it was not just the courtroom battle that defined her, but how she carried herself after the storm. The patience she cultivated during those long, dark nights, the compassion she offered herself in moments of vulnerability, and the hard-earned courage to trust again. Her experience had become a beacon, a message to others who might be trapped in their own struggles, that even in the depths of despair, there can be hope, that integrity and kindness need not be sacrificed in the fight for justice. Her story was proof that the humbling experiences that threaten to break us can actually build us up is met with perseverance and faith. As the sun dipped low that evening, Julia penned a heartfelt letter to those who had stood by her and those who perhaps one day would face their own battles of truth and trust. "Never doubt your worth," she wrote. "Hold on to the light, even when darkness surrounds you. Justice is not always swift, and truth can be fragile, but they have a way of finding those who are brave enough to seek them." This message encapsulated the learning engraved deeply within her soul, the belief that no matter how fiercely life tries to humiliate or deceive, the human spirit's capacity to rise is greater than any storm. Will you carry this lesson forward when faced with your own trials? Will you remember that even a humble heart, challenged and strained, can shine with indomitable strength and inspire others to do the same? Julia's journey was a testament not only to personal redemption, but to the universal power of resilience and hope. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. See you in our next story.